Hey guys, it's Rick. Welcome back to the channel. Today we are talking about 35 tips to improve your alcohol marker floral coloring. And we're going to jump in with tip number 1 is use the right ink. You're going to want to use an alcohol marker friendly ink like Memento Tuxedo Black or a hybrid ink that's alcohol marker friendly. Along with tip number 2 is pick the right paper. You want a good paper that's going to allow you to get the best from your coloring. Tip number 3 is a stamp positioning tool will save you. You can use it for many different things. You can double stamp or other, like we will see later, we'll reuse it again. There's always a great thing to have is your stamp positioning tool. We're going to use alcohol markers today. I'm using my Altenew artist brush markers. Tip number 4 is use a color wheel to pick your color scheme. Color wheel is a very important tool. We're going to start off by coloring with our yellow-green marker, and you're going to, tip number 5, map in your shadows, which is what I'm doing right here. I'm mapping in where my darkest colors are going to go. It's going to save me a little time. And then I can come in and add my darkest colors where I want them. And it makes it a lot easier to map it out, especially if you have never colored an image like an image that you haven't stamped before. This helps you. Tip number 6 is pick the marker tip that's right for you. Some people like brush tips. Some people like the chisel tip. Some people like the small little, whatever those little bitty fine tip points are called. I have no idea, but I use either the fine tip or the brush tip most of the time. The fine tip will help you get into certain areas. Tip number 7 is to do the tip-to-tip technique. You don't have to own all the markers. This will help you to blend two colors that are a little further apart than you thought they were to get a good transition between those two colors. And you will see tip-to-tip a lot in this video. So it's not going to hurt your markers. Don't be afraid of that. You can scrub it off on a scratch piece of paper. Tip number 8 is let the ink dry between applications. You will get a much better result that way. It will help you to let that ink sit into the paper and help the blend do its own process. So here we are with some tip-to-tip coloring like I was mentioning before. It just gives you that little transitional color between the two markers. It helps a lot. So I don't have to have the entire Altenew collection. I can just use that. Tip number 9, alcohol markers are designed to blend. Let them do their job. Don't rush it. You want to keep it nice and easy. Tip number 10 is find the way you like to color. Some people like to color light to dark. Some people like to color dark to light. Some people like to do other coloring ways. Find what works best for you. That will help you in the long run more than anything. So if you'd like to see a video on the entire tip-to-tip technique, let me know in the comments below, and I will be happy to do that for you. Just comment tip-to-tip in the comment, and we will do that. Tip number 11, don't be afraid of your darks. Some people are very afraid of their dark going too dark. You really aren't going to go too dark. You really need those darks in especially your florals, to make them look more realistic. If you go dark, you can always lighten. You can't go too dark, really. Don't be afraid of going too dark. You actually need those darks. In nature, you will see lots of dark colors and shadows. So don't be afraid of using those dark colors. They're actually very helpful and make your coloring look more realistic and pretty. And you can go back like you see here where I'm using the tip-to-tip and adding in more drama. I'm adding in a little bit more dark right there because that's in shadows. So don't be afraid of that. All right, our next tip coming up is tip number 12, be aware of your light. And by that, I mean be aware of your light source. If a petal or an object is underneath another object, it's going to be darker than an object that's on top of it. Anywhere two petals overlap or two images overlap, it's going to have a shadow underneath, so be aware of that light. You've got to put those in or it's not going to look right. Like here, for example, we went in and mapped in our shadows for this, and this petal I'm working on right now and the petal below it are going to be underneath that other flower, so they are going to be a lot darker than the other petals around it. So don't be aware of your light source. Don't forget that. That's super important when you're coloring. So if you hear the little humming in the background, I have my small little heater on, so because it's freezing in the studio. So that's what you're hearing in the background. I'm sorry about that, y'all. But just like with this flower, where that petal is overlapping the petal over underneath it or above it, there's not going to be as much shadow on that petal as there is in the one underneath it. But we do have those shadows on those folds, so you have to be aware of that. That light is going to hit it differently. So always be aware of your light source. All right, our next tip is to don't be afraid to have a warm toned color and a cool toned color in your colored images. You will see in nature, especially with florals, where one object may be in a cooler tone and one object may be in a warmer tone. So, for example, here we are coloring the last petal one we colored was in the red Cosmos set, and that's a lot cooler than the red Sunset set I'm using right now, which is a lot warmer. It's a lot brighter, a lot warmer. Don't be afraid to add those other tones in there. In nature, you will see on the same arrangement, you will see the light hit it where certain things are going to appear warmer and certain things will appear cooler. So that is a big tip when it comes to coloring, especially if you're trying to color realistically. And by coloring with the warmer and the cooler tones, it will give you a little bit more drama in your colored image. Plus, it's going to add a lot more pizzazz, is the word I'm really looking for. You're going to color them the same way, but because the light is going to be hitting it differently, it's going to show a little warmer if your light is a warmer tone. And most light is going to be a warmer tone than your shadows. Your shadows are going to be in the cooler tones. So, and you can see I'm using that tip-to-tip method. I told y'all we're going to be using that a lot in this video. All right, so this set of marker is Blush, Rouge, Crimson, and Velvet, where the Red Cosmos is Frosty Pink, Coral Berry, Ruby Red, and Grapevine, which are cooler. Now, do you have to do all of these tips? No, but if you pick one or two each time that you color an image, you're going to get you're going to get better. Two, you're going to change the look and feel of your image. And three, it's going to help you improve your coloring skills by taking just one or two tips each time you color an image and change up how you might do something. If you experiment and play, you're going to learn a lot. And I really would encourage that for anybody, is to just sit down, play with your markers, play with your supplies, and really learn what they can do and what, by changing those little bitty things, what happens. All right, tip number 14 is learn your markers. As I was just saying, you really want to learn your markers, and this Shades of Purple set throws me every time I use it. Because you have one marker that is cooler in the set as the dark, and one color that is a warmer purple in the set, and you get confused each time. Like, according to them, the R705 which was what I used first. It's supposed to be darker, and the 823 is supposed to be, reverse that. The 705 is warmer, and the 823 is cooler. Well, it throws me every time, and I start using it, and it doesn't look right to me. But that's not a big deal, because you can change how things appear and work. We'll get more into that in a second. But you really want to learn your markers. The more you play with them, the more you're going to learn how they work, and the more you're going to be successful with your coloring. Like, all right, for example, the lavender fields that I just used, which is the next to the lightest color, it just looks so light to me. And then you add the soft lilac on it, which is like a gray color to me, and it just completely different. So I end up switching in between and back and forth. But if you, like me, don't be afraid to change your mind for tip 15. Like I changed halfway through this colored image here and decided to use the 823 as the darkest and then blend out with the other two shades. You can always change your mind in coloring. Alcohol markers are very color friend, are very mind changing friendly, I should say. You can change the look of something by just how you apply it. Tip number 16 is color glazing can help you, and it can help you by, say, example, the ones that I had done before that were a little more red violet. I'm coming back in with that deep iris shade and changing it to color glazing over it with just a cooler tone to kind of blend all of that together and make it look more cohesive. Color glazing is just simply coming back over your markers with a different color, and it can help you change the mood or look of your stamped or colored images. I'm sorry, not stamped, but colored images. Just like we are doing here with this one. We are just gonna change that look. But it can also, you can use it the reverse way. Say you got something maybe a little too cool or too bright, you can use a complementary color or the other color and come back and change that tone. All right, tip number 17, don't be afraid to add another layer of color. Sometimes with alcohol markers, you need to come back and add a second layer once everything is dry to make objects appear a little brighter. So that's what we're doing here. We're coming back in and we are adding a second layer of coloring to brighten up some of these petals and make them stand out a little bit more. And that is going to help blend everything and help to intensify my coloring. And it actually will make the petal stand out a little bit more. Because I want my big petal flower to be really the focal point. So by coming back with that second layer, I can get that. All right, let the markers do the work is tip number 18. Don't be afraid to let them blend. Sometimes you think they might not be blending as well as you would like them to be. Don't overwork them. Just follow the numbers, let the colors blend together and do their job. Like right here, I'm coming back over this and adding that second layer, but I'm letting the markers blend naturally. I'm not trying to force them to blend to get my highlights. All right, tip number 19 is not everything has to be colored all the way. Especially with the center of flowers, you want to come in. You can add that base layer and add a little bit of shadow. But you also want to come in and add just pointillism or just tiny little dots of all your midtones, shadows, and darks in those little areas. There's no sense in coloring all of that together. If you add your little dots, it'll all look like they have been colored, but you're not really coloring everything. You're just adding the little stippling to make the colors appear. So don't be afraid to leave some areas uncolored and just do pointillism or stippling. It's two kind of the same technique, but kind of different. All right, tip number 20 is don't be afraid to stamp over your colored image after you're done with a darker ink color. Like, for example, if you like a bold black outline, you can come in with the obsidian black ink and stamp over your colored images as long as you left your stamp in place and you put it back in the same place, and that's going to intensify that dark outline. Tip number 21 is add the details. Highlights are your friend. And there is no right or wrong way to add highlights to your stamped images or stamped and colored images. It's a matter of personal preference. Like for me, I know that where the petals are standing up or coming over, they're going to get a little bit more light, so they're going to have a little highlight there. So we're adding that. Tip number 22, don't be afraid to heat set your work. Sometimes we get a little afraid to do that. Don't be afraid to. Tip number 23 is tape your dies in more than one place. I cannot tell you how often I will have a die shift. Number 24 is cut as much as you can from your cardstock. Conserve that paper. Cut as much as you can. You can see I cut the outline. Number 25 is embrace contrast with your sentiments. It's okay. It's great to have that contrast with the black and the white. It makes your sentiments stand out a little bit more. All right, tip number 26 is to small amounts of adhesive goes a long way, especially on your sentiment. You see I dabbed some of that off. It's a small area. I don't want it seeping out, so I'm just going to use small little dots of adhesive, and I know that's weird coming from me, but it's true. Small little dots on your sentiments will keep it nice and easy. Don't just outline them, just add little dots. All right, our next tip is don't forget the background. You've worked so hard on your colored image, you might as well have a nice pretty background or backdrop for it. So we're stamping our same image, and we're just using a complementary color ink. And I'm going to stamp it going in the opposite direction, so it just fills up that background panel, so it makes it nice and pretty. And I have a little interest back there. Number 28, don't be afraid to try different arrangements. It's okay to move your focal image around before you completely glue it down to get the look that you're going for, and it fits in the right area. You can see here I'm moving it a couple of different directions before I actually lay it down and stick it to the paper. Don't be afraid to change things up. You can easily remove adhesive. Number 29, don't be afraid to cut off the excess and add it in other places. And this is one of my favorite things to do, is to cut things that are overhanging off the sides, cut them off, and I can add them in other places on the card to make my arrangement feel larger. And now, after looking back, after finishing this card, I kind of wished I would have went ahead with that first instinct and put it at the top, red at the top, where it had a diagonal fun line. Don't be afraid to tuck things. There's nothing wrong with a little tucking, especially when you cut off a little area. You can tuck it in underneath the other flowers and add more leaves like we're going to do here. I'm going to peel that up and I'm going to tuck it right underneath there, and no one will ever know there is not another leaf under there that's not stamped. All right, number 30 is front and center can add a little drama. Add your sentiments nice and front and center on your cards, and it can cause just the right amount of drama to your card and let that sentiment stand out. It's not going to draw that much away from your focal image. The sentiment is really what you're talking about. 31, there's no right or wrong way to add your bling. I know you hear people say all the time, oh no, add this. Only do it this way. Put it in a W. Put it in an M. You can add your bling any way you want, what makes you happy. Like, for example, I like to do 3 around the sentiment and then add some other ones. Number 32 is, which falls into this, always have an odd number of things on your focal image or your embellishments. Keep your numbers odd. It makes for a more visually appealing look. Number 33, use a tool for perfect alignment. See here, we are taking our card front. I put my card base in the corner of my score buddy, and I'm going to slide my panel after we add the adhesive right up in that corner, and my card front is lined up on my card base perfectly fine. So that's another, don't be afraid of using a tool. Number 35, let the gel pen dry before adding any kind of liquid glitter. You want that gel pen to dry before you add your glitter. And y'all know how much I love glitter. So that's why we like our liquid pens, because they add the glitter and I don't have to get all messy. So, but you do want that highlight pen, that gel pen, to dry first before you add that. So there we go. We're going to finish adding our clear Winka, whatever this is, clear Spectrum Noir pen. And that, my friends, is my finished card. If you like this video, you're probably going to like this video that's going to be coming up here on the screen next. And I will see you in the next video. Bye, guys. Love you.